They say you can hear the death of an empire. They're wrong. You don't hear it. You taste it. It's a dry, metallic flavor on the back of your tongue, like you've been sucking on a spent lost power pack. It's the taste of static from 1,000,000 dying voxcasters, the ghost scent of ozone from 1,000 gutted plasma reactors, the iron dust tang of pulverized rockcrete and bone that hangs over every world, every hive, every damned patch of mud we've ever tried to hold. That's what we were breathing on the day the sky broke for the second time. The day we learned that hope is the cruelest lie the galaxy ever tells you. My name is Sergeant Kalen of the Cadian 112th, the ghosts of Khazar Pardon. At least that's who I was. Now I'm just a man with a lost rifle and a memory of a blue and gold ghost who promised us a future. They call us the Shattered Legions, now, those of us who won't bend the knee to the new order. It's a fancy name for a pack of dogs, hunted and hungry, biting at the heels of a god. It started on a world called Viridian Secundus. A shithole by any measure, but a strategic one. A river of promethium wide enough to drown a continent. And we were there to keep the spigot open for the Imperium. The fighting had been thick. The kind of grinding, attritional warfare the Departamento Munitorum loves because it looks neat on a data slate. So many enemy casualties, so many of our own, all balanced out in cold, binary arithmetic. Life is the Emperor's currency, and they were spending ours like water. We were dug into the refinery complex, a sprawling mess of rust-pitted pipework and sanctified distillation towers that hummed a constant, low-frequency thrum you felt in your teeth. The air was thick with the heat haze of burning promethium and the stink of cooked meat. Not the good kind. The kind that used to be your friends. I was checking the charge on my las gun, the familiar ritual of brushing sacred unguents from the power gauge with a grimy thumb, when the VoxNet exploded. Not with enemy contacts. Not with orders from command. It was a shriek of pure, undiluted signal corruption, a wave of static that felt like needles in my brain. Then a voice. It wasn't human. It was a symphony of data streams and binary cant, layered over a core of absolute, glacial authority. It was the voice of a god, if gods were made of logic and cold iron. It was Robot Guilliman. The first time his face had filled the sky, a decade prior, it had been a miracle. The Primarch returned, the avenging sun. He brought with him a new imperial truth, a new way of war. No more were we mere cannon fodder to be spent. We were to be efficiently utilized assets. We got new tactics, new gear that almost worked, new words like logistical optimization and strategic recalibration. He made us believe, for a flickering moment, that the nightmare could be managed. That the slow, grinding death of our species could be audited. This time, his words were different. The fatherly tone was gone, replaced by the cold finality of a judge passing sentence. People of the Imperium, the voice boomed, resonating not just in the air but in the very metal of the refinery, vibrating in the fillings of my teeth. Your governance has failed. Your devotion has been squandered. The Emperor's dream is a fossil, encased in the amber of dogma and fear. I have spent a standard decade in analysis. The conclusion is inescapable. The current Imperium is a non-viable entity. Its continued existence guarantees only one outcome, the extinction of mankind. Silence. Across the trench, young Donnelly had stopped trying to scrape the mud off his boots. He just stared up at the holographic visage that blotted out the system's sickly sun. Therefore, by the authority of reason and the mandate of survival, I hereby dissolve the High Lords of Terra and the existing Adeptus Terra. A new governance, the Imperium Secundus, is now in effect. Compliance is not a request. It is a biological imperative. The words hung in the air, too immense, too terrible to comprehend. Dissolve the Imperium? It was like announcing you were going to dissolve a mountain. Then the screaming started. Not from the enemy lines. From ours. The first sign it wasn't just a declaration was the skyfire. Streaks of blue and silver, not the hellish red of chaos or the green of Xeno's artillery. Clean, precise land strikes that fell upon our own artillery emplacements with surgical, dispassionate accuracy. They weren't trying to destroy the complex. They were cutting the head off the snake. Our command bunker vanished in a silent, blinding flash of light, replaced by a crater of glassed rock. "They've gone mad," someone shrieked over the Vox. "The Ultramarines! They've turned." It wasn't madness. That was the terrifying part. What we were witnessing was the opposite of madness. It was a terrible, flawless sanity. Guilliman had looked at the galaxy, run the numbers, and found the Imperium wanting. So he was cutting his losses. We were the losses. My squad, what was left of them, looked to me. Their faces, pale and smeared with grime, were masks of confusion. They were waiting for an order, an explanation. I had none. All I had was a cold knot of betrayal in my gut that was slowly crystallizing into a white-hot fury. "Sergeant." That was Lysandra, our squad's medic. She held a blood-stained narthecium in one hand, her knuckles white. What does this mean?" Before I could form a lie, the world dissolved into fire and noise. The new ultramarine pattern drop pods hit the ground with the sound of the sky breaking. They didn't crash. They impacted like meteorites of polished ceramite and wrath. The hatches blew open not with the chaotic fury of a berserker, but with the synchronized, rehearsed precision of a parade ground drill. And then they came out. The Primaris Marines. Guilliman's new men. Bigger, stronger, faster. We'd welcomed them when they first arrived. They were the future. Now they were our executioners. They moved through our lines like farmers scything wheat. Their bolt guns didn't roar. They chattered, a staccato rhythm of death. Each shot was a calculated expenditure of munitions, each target selected for maximum tactical disruption. They weren't fighting us. They were purging us. Shattered Legion elements, one of them boomed, his voice amplified by his helmet's voxcaster. It was flat, devoid of hatred, of passion, of anything recognizably human. "Lay down your arms and submit to processing. This is your only warning." Processing. The word was colder than a void shield's touch. "Like hell!" Donnelly screamed, rising from the trench with his lasgun spitting searing red light. The bolts splashed harmlessly against the Marine's blue chest plate. The Marine didn't even flinch. He simply turned, raised his bolt rifle and fired once. The top half of Donnelly ceased to exist in a pink mist and a crack of sound that felt like a physical blow. He was just a kid. 18 standard. He still wrote letters to his mother on a data slate he kept wrapped in an oilcloth. Something in me broke. It wasn't heroism. Heroes die in the first 5 minutes. This was something else. A deep, animal refusal. A stubbornness bred in the bone of every Cadian who ever lived. The planet broke before the Guard did. Well, the Imperium had broken, but by the throne, we would not. Ghosts of Parthen. I roared, my voice raw, my lasgun coming up. Independent fire. Aim for the joints. For the God Emperor. For the real Imperium. It was a pathetic gesture. A death rattle. Our last fire was like throwing pebbles at a glacier. But we threw them. All up and down the line, pockets of guardsmen, the stubborn, the foolish, the faithful opened up. We were no longer an army. We were a protest. A protest written in lost light and blood. I saw Lysandra rise, not with a weapon, but with her medpack, running towards a screaming trooper from another squad whose legs were gone. A Primaris Marine stepped into her path. She didn't stop. She looked up at that implacable helmet, at the lens that saw her as nothing more than a non-compliant variable, and I saw her lips move. I'll never know what she said. A prayer, a curse, a plea. The Marine backhanded her with his gauntlet. The sound was like a gunshot. She spun and fell, a broken doll, into the mud. That's when the world went red. I stopped thinking. I stopped being a sergeant. I was just rage and a trigger finger. I emptied my power pack at the Marine who had struck her down. One of my shots must have found a weak spot, a seam in his armor at the neck, because he staggered, a gout of black fluid spraying from the joint. He turned towards me, and even through the helmet, I felt his focus lock onto me. The last variable in his equation. His bolt rifle came up. I was already fumbling for a fresh power pack, my fingers numb and stupid. This was it. This was the end. Not in a glorious charge against the archenemy, but executed in a ditch on a promethium-soaked rock for the crime of loyalty. Then, the sky went dark again. This wasn't the clean, blue light of Guilliman's fleet. This was a sickly, pulsating purple and black. The air grew cold, so cold the promethium sweat on my face froze. A new sound filled the air, a chorus of 1 billion damned souls screaming in perfect, harmonious agony. From the warp-torn heavens, new drop pods fell. These were not clean and geometric. They were jagged, organic, dripping with ethereal slime and carved with symbols that hurt the eyes. They slammed into the battlefield among the Ultramarines. The new arrivals erupted from their pods. They were traitor Astartes, the word-bearers. Their armor was a deep, hateful crimson, etched with runes of damnation. They did not move with precision. They moved with a frenzied, ecstatic violence. Their bolters roared with demonic laughter, and they fell upon the Ultramarines with chains words shrieking hymns to forgotten gods. One of them, a giant with a Crozius mace crackling with dark energy, pointed a finger at the Primaris Marine about to kill me. "See!" the word-bearer champion bellowed, his voice a distortion of zealotry and warp fury. "See the lie of the corpse emperor. His perfect sun reveals his true face. He offers only cold, dead logic. We offer power. We offer truth. We offer life." The Ultramarine and the word-bearer clashed, a storm of ceramite and heresy. I stood there, my half-charged lasgun in my hand, caught between the hammer of cold, rational betrayal and the anvil of hot, insane salvation. The Ultramarines were here to kill us because we were inefficient. The word-bearers were here to save us because we were potential converts. There was no good side, no right choice. There was just the grinding of two monstrous gears, and we were the grist caught between them. I looked at Lysandra's body. I looked at the stain that was Donnelly. I looked at the faces of my few remaining troopers, their eyes wide with a terror that went beyond the fear of death. It was the terror of a universe with no North Star, no fixed point. The Imperium was dead. The avenging sun had slain it, and in its place, he offered a spreadsheet of our extinction, while his enemies offered a prayer book written in blood. I slammed the power pack home. The weapon hummed in my hands. It was the only thing left in the galaxy that made sense. Ghosts! I yelled, my voice a ragged thing, torn from a place deeper than my lungs. Withdraw! Rally Point Delta. We are not dying for his new order today. We ran. Not towards anything. Away. Away from the blue and the red, from the logic and the madness. We ran into the skeletal remains of the refinery, into the shadows, into the long, cold night that had just gotten infinitely darker. The war was over. A new one had begun. And we were all heretics now, one way or another. You never forget your first taste of promethium. It's not just the fuel. It's the blood of the Imperium, thick and greasy on the tongue, the taste of industry and war. In the deep guts of the Viridian refinery, it was all there was. The air was a soup of it, a chemical miasma that coated your lungs and made every breath feel like you were drowning in slow motion. We were rats in the walls of a dead god's engine, and the new gods were outside, deciding our fate with bolt and flame. We'd been running for what felt like days. Could have been hours. Time gets funny when you're hunted. It stretches and compresses. A minute hiding in a sludge pipe, listening to the rhythmic, earth-shaking thump of Astartes' footfalls, can feel like a lifetime. An hour of frantic sprinting through cavernous processing halls can feel like a single, panicked heartbeat. There were 8 of us left, out of a full 20-strength squad. 8. I'd started with 10 after the last push, and we'd picked up stragglers. A handful of souls from the 87th Joe Paul indentured, their faces gray with fatigue and their fancy, polished loslocks now caked in the same grime as our standard-issue Cadian gear. They fought well enough for Joe Pauls. They understood the new math. It wasn't about indentured service anymore. It was about breathing for one more minute. Our little pack was led by a Joe Paul sergeant named Arvin, a wiry, sharp-faced man with eyes that had seen too many debt collections. He found me crouched behind a shattered control console, trying to get a flicker of life from my Vox speed. All I got was a screech of binary and once, a clipped, ultramarine voice stating, Sector 7 Gamma pacified. Non-compliant elements purged. Moving to secure Promethium Siphon Alpha. Pacified? Arvin had spat, the word a curse. He jerked his head, a sharp, economical gesture. Your lot has the lay of this rust bucket. My lot has the ammunition. We're getting off this rock, Cadian. Together or not at all. It wasn't a request. It was a statement of fact. The last vestiges of regimental pride were a luxury we couldn't afford. We were all just non-compliant elements now. So we became a single, desperate organism, moving on instinct and the faint, fading memory of the refinery schematics I had in my head. Our goal was the Sable Grace, a troop transport lander from my own regiment. It was berthed in Hangar Bay Psi 9 on the far eastern edge of the complex. It had taken a hit during the initial word-bearer assault, a glancing blow from a Reaper autocannon that had slagged its primary thrusters. The tech priests had declared it a write-off. But the engineer attached to my company, a taciturn old cogboy named X-77, had once muttered to me over a cup of recaf that its secondary systems were intact. A capable mind and the Omnisia's grace could make it fly, he'd said. X-77 was a red smear on the rockcrete back at the command bunker. We had to hope he'd been right. The problem was the space between us and it. A kilometer of open landing pads, arterial pipeways wide enough to drive a baneblade through, and the skeletal remains of refueling gantries. All of it bathed in the hellish, pulsating light of the orbital battle above. Guilliman's fleet, a swarm of sharp, geometric silver, dueling with the chaotic, organic-looking vessels of the word-bearers. Lance beams the size of city blocks carved through the void, and we were the ants scurrying beneath the giant's feet. We moved through the bowels of the refinery, a world of its own. It was a cathedral to industry, now desecrated. Great piston engines, tall as hat blocks, stood silent and cold. Conveyor belts that once carried raw promethium shale were frozen in place, some still bearing their rocky cargo. The only light came from emergency lumiglobes, casting a sickly yellow pall over everything, and the frequent, violent flashes from the battle outside that threw long, dancing shadows that twisted into monstrous shapes. The sounds were worse. The distant, muffled booms of the fighting were a constant bass note. But up close, it was the dripping. A constant, maddening plink, plink, plink of water or promethium or something else leaking from the shattered pipework. The scuttling of unseen things in the dark, high up in the iron rafters. And the voices. Not human voices. The Voxnet was a graveyard, save for the Ultramarines' tactical chatter. But sometimes, on the very edge of hearing, you'd catch it. A whisper that seemed to come from the rust itself. It wasn't in any language I knew. It was a feeling. A promise of warmth, of rest, of a power that would make the pain stop. It was the voice of the word-bearer's gods, seeping into the metal of the world. Ignore it, I'd grunt as much to myself as to the others. It's just the wind in the pipes. Corporal Wren, a hulking Cadian with a face like a smashed-in rock, just shook his head. Ain't no wind in here, Sarge. He was right. The air was dead and still, thick with the promise of poison. We found the first of the processed, in a wide chamber that must have been a primary filtration hub. Dozens of large, cylindrical vats stood in rows, their glass viewports dark. The Ultramarines had been here. There were no bodies, no blood, just neat stacks of lasguns, flak armor, and helmets, all placed with an almost reverent tidiness in the center of the room. It looked like a museum display. The Imperial Guard, circa M41. But on the grated floor, leading towards a large airlock door, were streaks of a clear, viscous fluid. It smelled of ozone and sterilizing solution. What in the throne's name? One of the Jopals, a young woman named Ilara, whispered, her voice trembling. Arvin knelt, dipping a finger in the fluid and sniffing it. His face, already pale, went ashen. It's a neutralizer. High grade. For chemical spills. Or biological contaminants. He didn't need to elaborate. We were the contaminants. Guilliman's new order didn't just kill you. It cleaned you up. It erased you. The sheer, impersonal efficiency of it was a colder horror than any demonic ritual. We moved on, faster now, the silence in that chamber heavier than any artillery barrage. Our route took us across one of the main pipeways, a canyon of steel 100 meters across. It was our first real exposure to the open skies since the fighting began. The battle above was a light show of apocalyptic proportions, but my eyes were locked on the far side. That was our way forward. A maintenance hatch, just where the schematics in my head said it would be. Double time. No stopping. I barked, and we broke from cover, a ragged line of souls sprinting across the open space. We were halfway across when the world turned blue. A storm bird, its lines clean and deadly, descended from the smoke-choked sky. It didn't roar. It hummed, a deep, resonant sound that you felt in your bones. It settled on the pipeway ahead of us, blocking our path to the hatch, its ramp already lowering. "Scatter!" I screamed. It was too late. From the ramp, 5 figures emerged. Not the hulking Primaris. These were the old breed. Ultramarines. Firstborn. Their armor was the same brilliant blue, but it was older, scarred, the gold trim dulled by centuries of service. They moved with a different weight than the Primaris. A heavier, more deliberate grace. These were veterans who had fought at the side of their Primarch 10,000 years ago. And now they were here to finish his new work. They didn't fire. They just fanned out, their bolters held at a ready port arms. The lead Marine removed his helmet. His face was stern, ageless, carved from marble and lit by eyes as cold and blue as a glacier's heart. I recognized him. Captain Acheron of the 3rd Company. He had briefed our regimental command only a week ago. He had called us staunch defenders of the Imperium. Now, he looked at us as if we were a malfunctioning servitor. Sergeant Kalen of the Cadian 112th. His voice was calm, resonant, devoid of malice. It was the most terrifying thing I had ever heard. "You are leading these souls to damnation. The Emperor's dream is ended. Lord Guilliman offers a new dawn. Stand down. Your combat data suggests you are a capable soldier. That capability can be utilized in the new Astra Militarum." I stood my ground, my lost gun feeling like a toy in my hands. Behind me, I heard the shaky breaths of my squad, the click of safeties being switched off. A futile gesture. "The Emperor," I began, my voice hoarse. "The Emperor is a corpse on a throne, Sergeant," Acheron interrupted, not with anger, but with the flat finality of a scholar stating a historical fact. "His light has failed. We march now in the light of reason. Do not make me add your names to the ledger of wasted potential." It was the word ledger that did it. That cold accountancy of human life. Donnelly's life. Lyssandra's life. They were just entries in a ledger, now being balanced. I saw Arvin out of the corner of my eye. He wasn't looking at the Space Marine. He was looking past him at the Stormbird. His sharp Jopal eyes had calculated the odds, run the numbers of his own life debt, and found them wanting. He slowly began to lower his lost lock. And then the sky went wrong. It wasn't a ship. It was a tear. A ragged, bleeding wound in the fabric of reality directly above the pipeway. The air turned frigid, and the whispering we'd heard in the pipes became a deafening chorus of screams and laughter. From the wound, things fell. Not drop pods. They were lumps of flesh and metal, trailing entrails and fire, slamming into the pipeway around the Ultramarines. They were possessed. Word-bearers who had invited demons into their flesh, their armor fused with their bodies, becoming grotesque, clawed monsters. They landed with bestial roars, their forms shifting and bubbling, and fell upon the Ultramarines with unholy speed. Captain Acheron's face tightened with a disgust that was the first truly human emotion I'd seen on him. "The Neverborn," he snarled, slamming his helmet back on. "To me. Purge the filth." The Ultramarines turned as one, their bolters roaring to life, meeting the demonic charge with disciplined volleys of fire. The two titans clashed in a storm of sanctified ceramite and hellspawned flesh, right in front of us. We were forgotten. Insects beneath the notice of warring gods. "Now!" I yelled. "Go! Go!" We didn't need telling twice. We broke into a sprint, not towards the hatch, but back the way we'd come, skirting the edge of the melee. A possessed, a thing with too many mouths and a massive, crushing claw, was hurled back by a bolt round and crashed into the Jopal, Alara. She didn't even have time to scream. The claw closed, and she was gone, a brief, wet crunch lost in the din. We didn't stop. We couldn't. We ran until our lungs burned, diving back into the blessed, concealing darkness of the refinery's interior, leaving the sounds of the cosmic battle behind us. We collapsed in a small, tool-strewn alcove, gasping for air. 7 of us now. The ledger was balanced again. Arvin was staring at the ground, his hands shaking. He hadn't fired a shot. He had been ready to surrender, to be utilized. Now, he had seen what that utilization might mean, and what the alternative truly looked like. He looked up at me, his sharp eyes wide with a new kind of terror. "There's no way out, is there, Cadian?" he whispered. "It's just, which flavor of death do you prefer?" I didn't have an answer for him. All I had was the taste of promethium and blood in my mouth, and the cold, hard truth. The avenging sun had not brought us hope. He had brought us a choice: die as a statistic in his new, clean empire, or live as a sacrifice in the old, bloody nightmare. I checked the charge on my lasgun. It was half full. It would have to be enough. "We're not dead yet," I said, the words feeling hollow even to me. "The Sable Grace is still our only play. We just need to find another way." We were rats in the walls. But rats are stubborn, and they know how to survive. There is a particular kind of silence that only exists in the wake of a god's passing. It's not an empty silence. It's a heavy, pregnant thing, filled with the ghosts of what just happened. The air in the service conduit was thick with it, and with the smell of our own fear sweat. 7 of us, pressed against cold, condensation-slick metal, listening to the echoes of the war outside fade into a low, constant thrum, like a dying man's heartbeat. Corporal Wren was the first to break it. He slammed a fist against the conduit wall, the dull clang unnaturally loud in the confined space. "Thrown on Terra," he growled, the words torn from a place of deep, bewildered pain. He called us a wasted potential. Like we were a bad investment. "We are to them," Arvin said, his voice flat. He hadn't looked up since we'd collapsed here. He was staring at his hands as if he'd never seen them before. "That's all we've ever been. The Imperium counted us in bullets and rations. Guilliman just uses a different calculator." He finally lifted his head, his Jopal features sharp with a bitter clarity. "He's not a traitor, your Primarch. And he's just announced a galaxy-wide restructuring. We're being laid off." The analogy was so brutally, horrifyingly accurate it stole the breath from my lungs. It wasn't a heresy of passion or demonic pacts. It was a corporate takeover. The Imperium, a bloated, failing millennia-old corporation, had been acquired by a ruthless new management team, and redundant employees were being processed. "I don't care what he is," I said, forcing steel into my voice I didn't feel. "He killed Donnelly. He killed Lysandra. He's the enemy. That's the only math that matters now." I turned to the youngest of the Jopals, a boy who couldn't have been more than 16, his eyes wide with shell shock. "What's your name, soldier?" "P. Pelt, sir," he stammered. "You holding onto that charge pack, Pelt?" He nodded, clutching the long, rectangular power cell for our squad's lone heavy stubber like a holy relic. "Good man. You're our new heavy weapons specialist." I looked at the rest of them, Wren, Arvin, and 3 other Cadians. Vax, a grizzled sniper with a permanent squint, Gore, a hulking brute who carried the stubber itself, and Kira, a quiet woman who could strip and reassemble a Voxcaster in total darkness. The last Jopal was an older woman named Ilya, her face a roadmap of hard years, who said little but watched everything. We were a sorry-looking command staff for a shattered legion. "The pipeway is a loss," I stated. "Acheron and his boys might be busy, but you can bet that Stormbird sensors are still active. We go under." "Under?" Arvin asked, a flicker of his old cunning returning. "The schematics show promethium lines, waste disposal chutes, plasma conduits. It's a death trap." "It's a death trap up here," Wren grunted. "I'll take my chances with the sludge over another chat with the blueberries." He had a point. The refinery was a layered city. The upper levels were for processing and control. The mid-levels, where we were maintenance and transit. And the underlevels, that was the guts. The place where the grime and the byproducts and the things that broke down were sent to be forgotten. It was the one place the efficient, clean-thinking ultramarines might overlook. They preferred orderly, open spaces. They wouldn't relish wading through centuries of accumulated industrial filth. Our descent was a journey into another world, a layer of hell Dante never imagined. The maintenance ladder we found descended into a darkness so profound it felt solid. The air grew thicker, hotter, stinging the eyes and coating the tongue with a chemical bitterness that made promethium taste like fine amasec. The only light came from the pale glow of our lost gun power indicators and the faint, sickly luminescence of fungal growths on the walls. The sounds changed too. The distant booms of the battle were muffled, replaced by the drip and flow of liquids, the groan of straining metal, and a low, subsonic hum that vibrated in the fillings of our teeth. It was the sound of the refinery's heart, a mechanical, unfeeling pulse that had outlived its masters. We moved in a single file, our boots sticking to the grime-coated deck plates. I took point, with Ren at my back and Gore, the stubber, bringing up the rear. The passages were narrow, a claustrophobic maze of pipes, conduits, and rusted machinery. More than once we had to squeeze through gaps that scraped the flak armor from our shoulders, or climb over heaps of corroded, unidentifiable scrap. After an hour of slow, tense progress, we found the first sign that we weren't alone down here. It was a shrine. Tucked into an alcove formed by a pair of massive, dormant pumps, was a small, makeshift altar. A discarded Cadian helmet served as a base, upon which was placed a spent Lasgun power pack, a tarnished Imperial Eagle medallion, and a single, grimy lit candle that had long since burned out. Scratched into the metal of the pump housing above it were words, crudely etched with a bayonet or a piece of shrapnel. The Emperor protects. Guilliman betrays. A sharp, painful knot tightened in my chest. Others had been here. Others who knew. Others who were hiding just like us. This wasn't just a message, it was a declaration of faith. A stubborn refusal to accept the new, cold truth. In this filthy, forgotten place, the last true devotion to the God Emperor still flickered. "They're here," Kira whispered, her fingers gently tracing the scratched words. "Shattered Legion." "Or were Lux, the sniper," muttered, his eyes scanning the darkness beyond our pool of light. Candles out. We pressed on, the shrine giving us a grim, desperate kind of fuel. The passages began to widen, opening into a vast, cavernous space. We were at the edge of a subterranean reservoir, a black, stagnant lake of waste chemicals and coolant fluid. A narrow gantry, little more than a rusting catwalk, stretched out over the inky expanse, leading to a large access door on the far side. According to the map in my head, that door was a primary maintenance route for Hangar Bay Psi 9. It was our way forward. The gantry creaked ominously under our weight. The air over the lake was hazy with toxic fumes, and the surface of the black water was broken here and there by bubbles of gas that released a foul, eggy stench. We were halfway across when the water stirred. It wasn't a bubble. It was a ripple, moving against the stagnant flow. Then another, and another. Something was moving just beneath the surface. Move. Fast and quiet. I hissed, picking up the pace. It was too late. A shape broke the surface 20 meters to our left. It was humanoid, but wrong. Its flesh was pallid, bloated from long immersion, streaked with iridescent chemical slicks. Its eyes were milky white, blind, but its mouth was open in a silent shriek, revealing needle-like teeth. It wore the tattered remains of a refinery worker's coveralls. More of them surfaced, a dozen, then 24, their blind faces turning towards us, sensing our presence, our warmth in this cold, dead place. Crew and workers who had been exposed to a catastrophic leak or been dumped down here as part of some long-forgotten accident, their bodies and minds warped by toxins and isolation into feral, predatory things. We'd heard stories. Every major industrial world had them. Ghost stories for engineers. But these were very, very real. They didn't scream. They moved with a terrible, silent purpose, swarming through the black water towards the gantry's support pillars, beginning to climb. "Open fire!" I yelled. The silence of the underlevels was shattered by the sharp crack of Lossfire and the deafening roar of Gore's heavy stub. Muzzle flashes illuminated the cavern in strobing bursts, reflecting off the oily water and the pale, grasping bodies. The chem zombies didn't seem to feel pain. Loss bolts punched through their bloated flesh, sizzling and popping, but they kept coming, clambering over the bodies of their fallen. They reached the gantry and started pulling themselves up onto the catwalk. Ren met the first one with his bayonet, driving the long blade into its chest. Black, syrupy fluid gushed out, but the thing just clawed at him, its fingers hook-like and strong. He kicked it off, sending it tumbling back into the lake. "They're in the water! Below us!" Kira shouted, pointing her Loss pistol down through the grating and firing. A pale hand, grasping at her boot, disintegrated. The gantry shuddered violently. They were tearing at the support structures, trying to bring the whole thing down. We were a buffet table, and they were shaking the legs. "We'll never make the door!" Arvin yelled, firing his Losslock with precise, economical shots, each one taking a zombie in the head. They were the only shots that worked. "We need to blow the supports. Cut them off." "Blow it with what?" Gore bellowed over the stubbor's roar. "We're out of crock grenades." A desperate idea formed. A terrible, stupid, Cadian idea. The stubber, the charge pack. It's got enough juice for a localized plasma flare if we overload it. Everyone stared at me. A charge pack was volatile. Overloading one was a great way to take yourself and everyone around you to the Golden Throne. Pelt, the young Joe Paul, looked from the heavy power cell in his hands to the swarming horrors, then to me. His face was white with terror, but his jaw was set. He understood the new math. 1 life for 6. "I'll do it," he said, his voice surprisingly steady. "Like hell you will," I snarled. "Give it to me." "No, Sergeant," he said, and there was a sudden, shocking authority in his voice. "You're the one who knows the way. I'm just the ammo carrier." He looked at Arvin. "Sir, my life debt. It's paid." Before anyone could stop him, he turned and ran back the way we'd come, towards the thickest concentration of zombies swarming the gantry's central pillar. He fumbled with the charge pack, slamming it against the rusted metal and jamming his bayonet into the power coupling port. A high-pitched whine began to emanate from the cell, and a dangerous blue light flickered from the seams. "Pelt!" Arvin screamed. The boy looked back at us one last time, gave a sharp, almost imperceptible nod, and then the world turned white and loud. The explosion wasn't massive, but it was focused. A blast of concussive force and superheated plasma erupted from the central pillar. The catwalk buckled, groaned, and then tore itself in half. The section we were on lurched violently towards the far side, while the section behind us, where Pelt had been, collapsed into the black, churning water, taking a score of chem zombies with it. We were thrown from our feet, sliding down the now slanted gantry towards the toxic lake. I grabbed a handrail, my shoulders screaming in protest. Ren caught Kira by the webbing of her flak armor. Gore, still holding the now useless stubber, used its weight to anchor himself. Silence descended again, broken only by the hiss of settling metal and the lazy popping of bubbles on the lake's surface. The chem zombies were gone, either vaporized or sunk. Pelt was gone. Another entry in the ledger. A Joe Paul indentured soldier had just given his life to save a handful of Cadians. There would be no medal, no commendation. His name would be listed in some ultramarine database as a non-compliant element, purged. But we would remember. We were the only ledger that mattered now. We picked ourselves up, our ears ringing, our bodies aching. The access door was just ahead. We staggered towards it, a broken, filthy, grieving group of survivors. I put my shoulder to the release lever. It was stiff, but it gave with a groan of protest. The door slid open, revealing a clean, well-lit corridor beyond. A standard Imperial maintenance way, leading up. Towards the hangar. We stood on the threshold, caught between the horrific organic filth of the underlevels and the sterile, mechanical order that Guilliman represented. Both had tried to kill us in the last hour. I looked back at the black lake, at the shattered remains of the gantry. Somewhere down there, a boy named Pelt had just balanced the books. Come on, I said, my voice rough with more than chemical fumes. Let's go find our ride. We stepped out of the guts of the machine and left the ghost behind. They say the Cadian gate fell. They're wrong. It didn't fall. It was shattered, blown into a billion glittering shards of rock and plasteel and bone, scattered across the Eye of Terror. A gate implies something that can be opened or closed. What was left was just a hole. A screaming, raw wound in the galaxy that we, the children of that dead world, were tasked with stuffing with our own bodies. We are the ghosts of a broken lock, forever trying to hold back the tide. That stubbornness is in our blood. It's a genetic trait, bred into us through generations of standing on a wall that everyone knew would one day break. It's what made us the Emperor's finest. It's also what gets us killed. The corridor out of the underlevels was a shock to the system. After the cloying darkness and the toxic stink, the sterile, recirculated air and the unwavering glow of the lumen strips felt alien, almost hostile. It was the kind of clean that comes after a massacre. The silence here was different too. Not the heavy, dripping silence of the deeps, but the humming, empty silence of a place that has been scoured of life. We moved like ghosts through a tomb, our grime-covered boots leaving prints on the spotless deck plating. According to the faded stencils on the walls, we were in the primary maintenance umbilical for Hangar Bay Psi 9. We were close. So close that a fragile, dangerous thing began to bloom in my chest. Hope. I crushed it. Hope is a shoddy round that jams in the chamber when you need it most. Stubbornness is a well-oiled bayonet. You can always rely on the bayonet. We advanced in a standard fire team diamond, our weapons up, our senses screaming. Vax, our sniper, was on point, his long loss held low, his head on a constant swivel. The place was deserted. No bodies, no signs of fighting. Just clean. It was as if the Ultramarines had come through with holy water and flammers, purging the very memory of the men and women who had worked here. Too quiet, Ren muttered, his voice a low growl that echoed in the sterile corridor. His knuckles were white on his lost gun. They've been here, Arvin agreed, his sharp eyes missing nothing. He pointed with the barrel of his Loslock to a section of the wall. There was a faint, shimmering residue on the metal, like the ghost of a chemical spill. The same cleaner we'd seen in the filtration hub. They've already processed this sector. A cold dread began to pool in my gut. The Sable Grace. If they had reached the hangar. Double time, I ordered, my voice tight. We broke into a jog, the sound of our breathing and our pounding footsteps unnaturally loud. The corridor ended in a large, circular blast door. The control panel was dark. Kira, I said. She was already moving, pulling a multi-key and a spool of fiber wire from her webbing. She went to work on the panel, her fingers a blur. Doors lost primary power. Running on capacitors. I can bypass, but it'll be manual. Slow. Do it. As she worked, the rest of us took up defensive positions. Gore stood like a grim statue, the heavy stubber, now just a very expensive club, held across his chest. Ilya, the quiet Jopal woman, knelt, her Loslock steady as she watched our rear. Her silence was unnerving. It wasn't the silence of fear. It was the silence of someone who had already made their peace and was just waiting to see how the final act played out. With a series of heavy, grinding clunks, the blast door began to shudder inwards, moving with agonizing slowness. A sliver of darkness appeared, then widened. The air that washed out was cold and smelled of ozone, void sealant, and dust. And something else. The coppery, thick scent of blood. The door ground to a halt, opened just enough for a man to squeeze through. Vax went first, slipping through the gap like a shadow. A moment later, his voice came back over the squadvox, tight and grim. Clear. And you need to see this, Sarge. We squeezed through one by one, emerging onto a high gantry that overlooked Hangar Bay Psi 9. The scale of the place was immense, large enough to house a dozen transports. But it was a graveyard. The Sable Grace was there, just as I remembered it. A fat-bellied, ugly trooplander, its Cadian blue and gray livery scarred and burned. The Reaper autocannon hit had indeed slagged its primary thrusters, leaving them a mess of cooled, blackened metal. But it wasn't the ship that held our attention. The hangar floor was a charnel house. Bodies lay everywhere. Not in neat, process stacks, but where they had fallen. Imperial guardsmen, mostly from my own regiment, but also Navy armsmen and deck crew. They had made their stand here. They had fought. And they had lost. Badly. The killers were still here. A squad of Ultramarines stood in a loose cordon around the Sable Grace. 5 of them. Primaris. Their blue armor was spattered with blood and gore, but they stood at perfect ease, their bolt rifles held at rest. They were guarding the ship. One of them was methodically placing small, disc-shaped devices on the lander's landing struts and engine housings. Croc charges. They weren't just securing the area, they were mining our only way out. And in the center of the hangar, standing over the body of a Cadian colonel whose name I never knew, was a figure I recognized. It was the Primaris Marine who had killed Donnelly. I knew it was him. The same implacable posture, the same cold efficiency. He had his helmet off, revealing a face that was brutally handsome and utterly devoid of emotion. He was speaking into a vox bead. Sight is secure. The Sable Grace is neutralized as a potential escape vector. All non-compliant elements in the hangar have been pacified. Awaiting further instructions. Pacified. The word was a spark on a promethium spill. Ren let out a low, animal sound beside me. He had seen him too. The Marine who had turned Donnelly into pink mist. His finger tightened on the trigger. I grabbed his weapon, forcing the barrel down. Not yet, I hissed, my voice a razor's edge. He turned on me, his eyes wild with grief and rage. He's right there, Kalen. He butchered the kid. And he'll butcher us if we charge in. I shot back, my grip like iron. We are not dying on our knees in a blind fury. We die on our feet, with a plan. Or we don't die at all. Understood? The struggle in his face was a war in microcosm. The instinct for vengeance versus the cold, stubborn will to survive. The stubbornness won. He gave a sharp, jerky nod, his breath coming in ragged gasps. We were trapped. Below us was a kill zone, guarded by 5 Astartes super soldiers who had just massacred a company of our comrades. Our only exit was behind us, and it would only be a matter of time before more of them came that way. Our only hope was a ship that was being wired to blow. It was Arvin who broke the grim silence. He was staring not at the Marines, but at the far end of the hangar. The control tower, he whispered. Its Auspex array. It's still active. I followed his gaze. The control tower was a multi-level structure built into the hangar wall, its wide windows looking out over the bay. It was dark, but a single, green light winked rhythmically from a bank of consoles. The primary Auspex scanner. It was a short-range system used for guiding landings and monitoring hangar traffic. Right now, it was probably the only sensor in the sector not being jammed or controlled by the Ultramarines. What good is it? Gore rumbled. It can't fly the ship. No, Arvin said, a strange, calculating light in his eyes. But it can see the battle in orbit. It can get a signal out. A signal to who? Kira asked, her voice hollow. The Imperium is gone. There's no one to answer. There's always someone listening. Ilya spoke for the first time, her voice a dry rustle. She was still watching our rear. The word bearers. Their ships. They ride the empiric tides. They listen for screams. For prayers. The air went cold. She was right. It was a monstrous thought. Calling the archenemy. Inviting the demonic to save us from the logical. It was the absolute inversion of everything we had ever fought for. I looked at the faces of my squad. Ren, burning with a need for revenge. Gore, solid and unyielding. Vax, a patient hunter. Kira, the technician who could make machines sing. Arvin, the pragmatist who saw angles where others saw walls. And Ilya, who seemed to have already stared into the abyss and found it wanting. I looked down at the Ultramarine, the man who represented a future of clean, efficient death. A future without faith, without passion, without the messy, stubborn, beautiful defiance of the human spirit. A future where Donnelly was just a statistical error and Pelt was a balanced ledger entry. The choice was no choice at all. Kira, I said, my voice low and final. Can you get that Auspex array to send a focused, high-gain distress call on all Imperial and non-Imperial frequencies? She understood immediately. Her face paled, but she nodded. I can reroute power from the gantry systems. It'll be a lighthouse flare. Everyone in the system will see it. The Ultramarines will home in on it in minutes, Vax stated. I know, I said. Arvin, you and Ilya cover our 6. Ren, Gore, you're with me and Kier. We're going to the control tower. I met each of their eyes. We are not calling for rescue. We are calling for a distraction. A big, bloody, chaotic one. The plan was suicide. A glorious, stupid, Cadian kind of suicide. The only kind left to us. We didn't say another word. There was nothing left to say. We were the Shattered Legion. The ghosts of a dead world and a betrayed ideal. And we were about to sell our souls for one last, stubborn chance to spit in the eye of a god. We moved, splitting into 2 groups. Arvin and Ilya melted back into the maintenance umbilical to guard our escape route. A forlorn hope if ever there was one. The rest of us began to move silently along the high gantry towards the access ladder that led down to the control tower. Below, the Ultramarine who had killed Donnelly finished his vox call. He looked up, his cold, blue eyes scanning the hangar's upper levels. For a heart-stopping second, I thought he looked right at me. But his gaze passed over, unseen. We were ghosts. For now. The descent into the maelstrom had begun. A prayer in the 41st millennium is not a request. It's a weapon. You don't ask the God Emperor for mercy. You load your faith into the chamber of your soul and you fire it at the darkness, hoping the recoil doesn't shatter you. What we were about to do wasn't a prayer. It was a blasphemy. We were taking that weapon, aiming it backwards, and pulling the trigger, hoping we'd survive the backblast. The control tower was a tomb of dead screens and silent machinery. Dust motes danced in the beams of our lamp packs, the only movement in the stale air. The bodies of the flight controllers lay where they had been cut down, their hands still resting on cold consoles. The Ultramarines' efficiency was a thorough, chilling thing. Kira didn't flinch. She stepped over a fallen tech acolyte and went straight to the primary Auspex station, her fingers flying across the keypad, pulling wires from her kit, her face a mask of intense concentration. The backbone is intact, she murmured, more to herself than to us. They just killed the power. I can bypass, reroute through the secondary capacitor bank. Ren and Gore took up positions at the tower's main door, their weapons trained on the hangar bay below. Through the grimy plasteel window, I could see the Ultramarines. They hadn't moved. They were statues of blue and crimson, guarding our coffin. The one who had killed Donnelly was looking at a data slate, utterly absorbed. He was probably reviewing the casualty reports, assessing his efficiency rating. How long, Kira? Asked my voice tight. 2 minutes. Maybe 3. She didn't look up. I have to spoof the system's own identity protocols. Make it think it's an automated distress beacon from a command-level source. Otherwise, they'll just ignore it as junk traffic. Make it scream, Ren said from the door, his voice a low, venomous thing. Make it sound like the whole damned Imperium is dying. He didn't know how right he was. I moved to the wide, armored window, looking out at the Sable Grace. It sat there, a wounded bird, its wings clipped. Our escape, our freedom, covered in enough croc charges to scatter its atoms to the solar winds. This was it. The last stand of the ghosts of Khazar Parth. Not on the walls of Cadia, but in a dusty control tower on a promethium-soaked rock, betrayed by the one being we were told was our salvation. The galaxy had gone mad. The sane were the monsters, and the only salvation left wore the face of the ultimate nightmare. We were choosing to side with the devils we knew against the angels who had decided we were obsolete. Got it, Kira said, her voice trembling with a strange mix of triumph and terror. She slammed a final connection home. The main Auspex screen flickered, then glowed to life. A schematic of the Viridian system appeared, showing the tangled, chaotic mess of the fleet engagement. Silver icons for Guilliman's fleet, pulsing crimson blips for the word bearers. And in the center, a single, blindingly bright white. A low hum built in the room, vibrating up through the deck plates. The tower's external vox horns, mounted on the roof, began to glow with a faint, angry red light. "The message is looping," Kira said, her eyes fixed on the screen. "All frequencies. Imperial military channels, astropathic choirs, commercial hailer bands, and the empiric resonance frequencies. The ones that the others use." The message was simple. A recording of the last, frantic minutes from the hangar's internal security feed. The sounds of the Ultramarines' attack, the screams of the guardsmen, the cold, flat voice of the Primaris Marine reporting the pacification. And over it all, Kira had layered the highest priority Imperial distress code, the one reserved for a planet-wide exterminatus-level event. The Cadian Gate breach signal. It was a siren song of pain and betrayal. And we were the bait. It took less than a minute. The first sign was a shift in the light from the hangar's massive void-shielded skylight. The cool, silver light of the stars was blotted out by something vast and dark. It was a ship, but not like the clean, geometric vessels of the Ultramarines. This thing was a cathedral of pain, all Gothic spires and weeping metal, its hull the color of a blood clot, studded with screaming faces rendered in brass and iron. A word-bearer's battle barge. It filled the sky, a leviathan of heresy, and its shadow fell upon us like a physical weight. The air in the control tower grew thin and cold. The scent of ozone was replaced by the smell of hot copper, incense, and open graves. Below, the Ultramarines snapped to attention. They looked up, their weapons coming up in unison. For the first time, I saw a crack in their implacable facade. A hesitation. This was not a variable their Primarch's logic had accounted for. This was the warp made manifest. Then the world tore open. Reality screamed. A jagged, purple-black rift split the air in the center of the hangar bay, vomiting forth a wave of psychic force that threw the Ultramarines from their feet. From the rift they came. Word-bearers. Not the possessed this time, but the legionaries themselves. Their crimson armor was a declaration of war against the very concept of hope. They charged, bolters roaring, their war cries a distorted litany of hatred. The Ultramarines met them with disciplined fury. Bolt rounds tore through the air, exploding against ceramite in starbursts of fire and shrapnel. It was a clash of titans, a battle of fundamental opposites. The cold, pure logic of Guilliman's new order against the hot, fanatical madness of the old darkness. "Now!" I roared. "While they're distracted, to the ship!" We burst from the control tower, not down the ladder, but through a service hatch that led directly onto the hangar floor. We were insects scurrying between the feet of battling gods. A bolt round meant for a word-bearer whined past my head and obliterated a cargo hauler behind us. The noise was deafening, a physical pressure that beat against my skull. "Rengor, get those charges off the landing struts." Kira, with me, the main ramp. We sprinted for the Sable Grace. The Ultramarine who had been placing the charges was locked in melee with a word-bearer champion, a massive brute with a crackling power maul. We slid past them, into the relative cover of the lander's shadow. Ren and Gore went to work on the charges with their bayonets, prying at the magnetic locks. They were Ultramarine make, sleek and simple. Too simple. Gore just grunted and smashed one with the butt of his stubber, crushing the mechanism. It was a crude, beautifully human solution. I hit the manual release for the main ramp. It groaned, then hissed downwards. The interior was dark, smelling of cold metal and wreck-F. A shadow fell over me. I turned. He was there. The Primaris Marine. Donnelly's killer. His perfect face was now smeared with soot and a thin trickle of blood from a cut on his temple. His cold eyes were locked on me. He had disengaged from the melee. We were the loose end. The unfinished equation. "The calculus of your continued existence has reached its terminus, Sergeant," he said, his voice still that flat, inhuman monotone. He raised his bolt rifle. There was no time to think. No time for a heroic last stand. I was going to die here, in the shadow of my escape, just like Donnelly. A wasted potential. A single, sharp crack split the air. It wasn't the roar of a bolter. It was the precise, high-velocity report of a long loss. A perfectly aimed shot took the Primaris Marine in the eye lens of his helmet. The lens shattered. He staggered back, a short, choked gurgle escaping his lips. He didn't fall, but his shot went wide, blowing a crater in the deck beside me. I looked up. High in the control tower, framed in the window, was Vax. He lowered his long loss, gave me the faintest of nods, and then disappeared from view to find a new firing position. The Marine was blind in one eye, his system scrambled. He was still a god of war, but he was wounded, staggered, and I was just a stubborn Cadian with a loss gun and a debt to pay. I didn't scream. I didn't charge. I simply raised my loss gun, set it to full auto, and emptied the entire power pack into the joint of his armor at the hip, right where Donnelly's shots had splashed harmlessly. The sustained, focused fire was too much. The ceramite glowed white-hot, then buckled. The superheated air inside his armor cooked the flesh beneath. He roared, a sound of pure, undiluted shock and pain, the first truly human sound I'd ever heard from him, and collapsed onto one knee. I dropped the empty loss gun, pulled my bayonet, and lunged. I didn't aim for a killing blow. I wasn't strong enough. I drove the blade into the same ruined joint, twisting it with all the weight of my body, all the grief for Donnelly, all the fury for Lysandra, all the bitter, shattered hope for the future he had stolen. He swatted me away. It was like being hit by a land speeder. I flew through the air and crashed against the Sable Grace's landing strut, my ribs screaming in protest. But I looked up and I saw him. He was trying to rise, but his leg wouldn't support him. The perfect, efficient machine was broken. "Sarge, go!" Ren yelled. The charges were clear. I scrambled to my feet, pain lancing through my side, and stumbled up the ramp into the lander. Kira was already in the cockpit, her hands flying across the controls. Powering up. The secondary thrusters are online. It'll be a rough ride, but she'll fly. Ren and Gore piled in after me, and I hit the ramp control. As it hissed shut, I saw the last of it. The wounded Primaris Marine, still on one knee, was engulfed by a wave of word-bearers. They fell upon him with chain axes and talons, their triumphant shouts echoing even over the din. The Ultramarine line had broken. The Sable Grace shuddered. The engines whined, coughed, then roared to life with a vibration that shook the very bones of the ship. We lifted off, unsteady, lurching sideways as the unbalanced thrusters fought for control. We scraped against the hangar ceiling, shedding paint and metal, then shot out through the ruined skylight into the maelstrom of the void battle. We were free. I slumped into the co-pilot's chair, my body one giant ache. On the viewport, Viridian Secundus fell away beneath us, a burning, broken orb. The two fleets were still locked in their deadly dance, but the word-bearers, reinforced, were gaining the upper hand. We had done it. We had unleashed the devil to save ourselves from the angel.